amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. When we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our stories from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our earth within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Continuing our togetherness, I invite you again to join me in our responsive reading. When I give you the cue, please say we seek each other. The mountains seem higher today, the storm seems more tumultuous, and even though I can still see the birds soaring above me, I can no longer imagine what it must take to fly. I do not feel safe, I do not feel whole, and I do not feel myself. I must find refuge. We seek each other. I cannot find myself in the mirrors, just sad eyes and frown lines staring back at me. I want to sing again, to walk again, breathe again, but my tired bones keep me stuck in place. I am trying so hard to find refuge.
We seek each other.
I don't know what to do. My me too weighs too heavily on my soul. My memories are too vivid and too vague, too frightening and too much. I cannot stay silent, but I cannot speak through these gags being forced upon me. I have to find refuge.
We seek each other.
I'm afraid of you. Afraid you will not hear me. Afraid you will turn your back to me.
We seek each other.
I need you to try. I need you to handle my vulnerability gently, to lean into your discomfort, to sit with mine. I need you to offer yourself as I offer myself, and I need you to care about me as much as I care about me. I need you to try. I need to find refuge.
We seek each other.
I need you to believe me.
We seek each other.
You are a place of refuge. Unitarian Universalists are often called to action. We are called to protest, to march, to call our government, to write letters, to pray. We are also called to a quieter form of compassionate justice, bearing witness. Make no mistake, this is not a passive act. Bearing witness is action. It is putting our entire selves into the moment before us, realizing it's not about ourselves, and staying present regardless of how we feel. It is a spiritual act, connecting us to each other on a divine level and feeding life itself. In the past month, many of us have borne witness to stories we could not imagine and did not understand. Others of us have borne witness to stories too similar to our own, and we understood them far too well. And in this moment, I am calling you to bear witness.
I can clearly remember the first time I was subjected to unwanted sexual behavior. While walking down a busy street one day, a few blocks from home, a convertible sports car pulled up beside me. The top was down and the driver, a man, spoke to me to get my attention. I looked over and saw that he had his pants down and was touching himself. I quickly backed away and kept walking, doing my best to ignore him, pretending I had not really seen what I had just clearly seen. Then he drove off. I was 11. The encounter was very disturbing to me, but I never told anyone about it. I didn't know how to tell anyone about it. And looking back now, I don't think reporting the incident would have been really helpful in any way. Inappropriate comments directed at me by random men of all ages became depressingly common from about the age of 13. Responding to the outright lewd ones are relatively easy. It's been my experience that when men say really rude things, I kind of think they expect to be ignored, but they love it when you flip them off or cuss them out. That seems to be what they're after often, the power to rattle a woman's cage a little bit. The tricky ones to respond to are the ones who offer unsolicited compliments on our appearance. You know, the classic wolf whistle, that sort of thing. A woman who ignores this sort of unwanted attention is usually then called a bitch, or worse. So we sometimes choose instead the fake smile and the uncomfortable laugh and move on, which feels gross. So it's a no-win situation. Again, it's a power thing, although I doubt most men who are in the habit of complimenting women like that even recognize it as such. Historically, we as a society tend to lay the blame for such abuse at the feet of girls and women who are the victims of it. What were you wearing? Why were you walking down that street by yourself? My favorite, boys will be boys. You just need to learn how to not provoke that sort of behavior. I got that a lot. How could you let yourself get into that situation? It would be hard enough if the only thing that girls and women had to deal with were wolf whistles, rude comments, and the occasional flasher in a convertible. But we all know it doesn't end there. Those behaviors are indicative of a broader culture in which the lives and bodies of girls and women are still too often treated as something which belongs to men, both individually and collectively, and a culture which routinely lays the blame for that sort of thing at women's feet. Which brings me to my story. And this is a story that I have carried with me for over almost 35 years now, and I have told very few people about it, but in light of people staying silent, bad things are happening. So it's I no longer have the luxury of remaining silent. So my best friend from high school had been dating someone for a while and started going to his church and hanging around with some of the youth there at that congregation. And she and her boyfriend invited me to church one day to a youth activity. And they introduced me to another boy there. He immediately began to flirt outrageously and asked me out that day. He was super confident, and he was charming and good-looking, and I said yes. So we began dating, and we were actually married less than a year later. I was 19, and he was 20. The early days of the relationship seemed normal, but after we married, things began to change. He became possessive and manipulative. He was emotionally and psychologically abusive. When I tried to talk about it or called him out on this frequent lying and increasingly heavy drinking that went along with it, he either denied the behavior or implied that it was somehow my fault. In fact, I often found myself apologizing for doubting him. I realize now that I was being gaslighted, which is the term for someone who's manipulated into doubting their own thoughts and feelings and even sometimes their own sanity. But it would be many years before I would hear that term and learn what it meant. At the time, I lacked the language to name what was happening to me, and it's difficult to process or fight something you can't properly name. So after a few years of being gaslighted, I was unprepared to deal with what happened to me just before I finally left and filed for divorce. So again, this was nearly 35 years ago, so some of the details are lost to memory and some are very vivid. Not least because I tried really hard to not think about it, and on a certain level, I believe this was something I let happen to me because I should have known better. I was steeped in a culture that policed the behavior of girls and women as a way to keep boys and men from acting badly. But I was always a feisty one, and my husband and I clashed often and loudly about proper gender roles. One day we had a particularly bad fight. I can't recall exactly what the argument was about, but we almost always argued when I called him out for doing something manipulative or deceptive or just plain mean, which he would almost invariably deny. This time I didn't back down and apologize for questioning him. He became enraged and sexually assaulted me. And then we both pretended like nothing happened. Not long after this terrible experience, he went to Vegas for the weekend with some buddies, and I packed everything I could into my car, left everything else behind, and filed for divorce. Everyone thought I left because I had finally had enough of the lying, the drinking, drugs, which was true. But I never told anyone about the assault. The truth is, I didn't actually realize that I had been a victim of anything other than a really bad marriage, because I had never heard anyone talk about the fact that a husband can rape his wife. I didn't have the language for that either. So how could I talk about it? And besides, it was clearly my fault because, I should have done something to diffuse the situation. That's the message I absorbed from the culture around me. I never reported the assault. Most sexual assaults are never reported. There are so many reasons women have for not reporting. Fear, lack of knowledge, lack of support, lack of any real consequences for the men accused of such crimes. The fact that sexual crimes are often not reported doesn't mean that girls and women are lying. We're afraid of what happens when we do report, and rightly so. I feared my husband. The reason I left while he was out of town was I was afraid of him. I didn't know what he would do if I confronted him with this. But I'm telling you all my story now because we can no longer remain cowed and fearful for speaking truth to power. You can't fight something you won't talk about. So now I'm talking and fighting because I am not only a victim, I am a survivor.
Me too. I'm a survivor.
Me too. Me too.
The world watched in horror yesterday as Brett Kavanaugh was confirmed as the new Supreme Court Justice. A lifetime appointment whose decisions will ripple through our society and will cost thousands, if not millions, of lives. As horrific as it was also no surprise. This country did the same thing in 1991 when we ignored Anita Hill and confirmed Clarence Thomas to the highest court. Two of our Supreme Court justices are sexually violent men. Our president is a rapist, and we are survivors. For those of you who aren't survivors, and for those of you on the outside of this crisis looking in, I want to tell you how it feels to be a survivor in a time like this. I need you to understand because I need you to know how desperately we are seeking sanctuary right now. It feels like his hand is back on my throat, and I am gasping for breath again. I can hear him whispering on my cheek again, taunting me, challenging me to scream, telling me no one will hear, and even if they did, they wouldn't care. It feels like he was right. It feels like no one has cared in a really long time. And maybe no one will. At the same time, it feels like a fire burning hotter than anything I have known before. It feels like if I cannot expel this fire through my hands and fingertips aimed squarely at those in power who allow this, if I cannot do that, then I may burn alive. Like the warrior in me will never be silent again, and the world of justice, equity, and compassion that I believe in is just around the corner, and I am running at it full throttle. This intense dichotomy is not unique to me. There is a country of women right now feeling the same. And my God, are we seeking sanctuary? Somewhere to rest our weary bones and maybe even stitch our hearts back together again. As I often say from here on this spot, I don't have all the answers. I don't pretend to either. But unlike other times, I'm telling you today that I'm certain of this. We will find our sanctuary in each other. Our faith affirms the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Sometimes that is exceedingly difficult to remember these days. And I am not just talking about seeing the inherent worth and dignity in violent men either. The only thing I will say about them today is that I hope I'm around when they learn that their worth and dignity is inherent and not earned by domineering, dangerous grabs for power. Survivors do not always remember our inherent worth and dignity. And when we falter, we need your dignity and worth to reflect ours back to us. We need your compassion and kindness too. But inherent worth and dignity is different. Compassion and kindness are ways of living into your worth and dignity. They are characteristics in people who understand that love is universal. You are worthy simply because you exist, and your dignity is not dependent on baptisms, academic accomplishments, accumulated wealth. You exist. You have inherent worth and dignity. That this belief is the foundation of the sanctuary we are seeking right now. I need to know that I am too worthy. We need to be reminded that we are loved not because we earned it, but because we were born for it. We need to know you won't give up on us because we cry too often right now, or because we are so damn angry. We are so damn angry. And you know what? You need us too. You need us to stand before you with our brokenness, with our sisterhood of survival, and be reminded that your strength and your capacity for compassion is vast. We will remind you of your worth, of your ability to speak truth to power and to empathize with others. You need to know we believe in you and we believe in you. Because we do. This is where we will find sanctuary, the respite from the ugliness raging on. We will find it in each other and in our shared existence as worthy people. Let us stand before each other today and all days and reach for the fire of another, committing to be each other's keepers. Let me rest warily by your side. I will let you rest by mine, and I will vow to protect you as you protect me. Late night phone calls or texts, petitions signed, pots of teas brewing, tears shed on each other's shoulders, disclosures of past and present pain and of future fear. Give it all in the same vein of creating safe space, and let me give it all back to you again. We must find sanctuary, for the road ahead is rocky and uneven, and we must find it soon, because too many of us are growing too tired to keep going like this. And we must find it in each other, for we are the safe places, the radical faith, and the unending love. May it be so.